In this video, I'm going to show you how to pull and use a child demographic report to find the ages of the children in your program so that you can do ASQSE 2 administration. There are 3 steps to this process. Number 1, we have to be able to pull the child demographic report. Number 2, we have to download it into a usable format. And then number 3, we have to alter that download in order to calculate the ages. So the first step is to actually pull the child demographic report. And to do that, I'm going to get to the reports page by clicking reports over here in the upper right hand corner. To find the child demographic report, I'll use the search bar by putting in the word demographic. You can see it's the second report in this list. I'm going to go ahead and click select, which will bring up the left side menu. You can see that there's a lot of filters available for this report, including classroom and then all of the demographic categories. For our purposes of pulling birth dates and ages in order to administer the ASQSE 2, I'm not going to use any of these filters because I really want all the children in the program in order to do this. You need to put in a start date and an end date in order to pull this report. And really for our purposes of administering the ASQSE 2, we want to include all of our actively enrolled children. This report will include children that have a discharge date after the start date and an enrollment date before the end date. So this report will include all children who were enrolled at some point during the start and end date. I'm going to pretend that I'm going to do my screening in the spring of 2021. So I might use a start date like February of 2021 and an end date of May of 2021. And that will include my actively enrolled children. Please keep in mind that you cannot use dates that are in the future. So when you pull this report, you want to have it somewhat close to when you plan to do the screening. When you have your start and end date in, go ahead and click Run Report. And that will bring up the child demographic report. I think this is a good time to mention that before you go through this process, you want to make sure that you have all of the children in your system that should be there. So that just means checking for accuracy. So making sure that you've discharged all the children that have left your program and you've enrolled all the children that have been added to your program. So this is the child demographic report. The first 2 pages, we're going to give you some summative charts of your child enrollment by the different demographics. So you can see we have a children by race and a children by ethnicity. If I go to the next page, I'll see children by gender, children by IEP status, and children by DLL status. If I continue through this report, I'm going to get to a table, and this table is going to include every single child that was actively enrolled during this time period, along with some of their identifying information and demographics. This is the table that we want to use in order to kind of figure out birth dates and ages to administer the ASQSE 2. In this format here, it's not very usable, so I need to download it into a usable format. To do that, I'm going to use this button, the Export To button. You can see the little floppy disk. So that's where I'm going to click. And for this process, we're going to download it as a CSV file. You can see there's lots of formats available, including Excel files. But to really get the most usable format, you want to download it as a CSV file. I'm going to go ahead and do that by clicking CSV and then clicking on the download. So this is the download that you get when you download the CSV file from the child demographic report. So you can see it has that table that we were just looking at, and each one of my entries is in its own cell or own row. So here's my child and all of their identifying information. It's a little messy looking right now. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it up. The first thing I do is I like to delete the first 9 rows. These are just some identifying information for the report. So to do that, I'm going to click the first row, hold and drag, right click, delete. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. There's some cells at the bottom that just give you the criteria for the report, and what we really want is this table with child names, birth dates, and other information. So you're going to find the first cell after the last name, click hold, drag, right click, delete. I'm going to scroll back up to the top. So now you can see that my headers are in the very first row. It's still a little messy looking, so now I'm going to just kind of expand my rows so I can see my data a little more clearly. You can see this column right here doesn't have a title, and it's actually the enrollment date. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that header in. Okay, and then you can also see in this table there's a few empty columns, and I just suggest deleting them just so it's a little bit easier to look at. So you can do that by clicking up at the top, left click at the top to select the whole column, right click, delete. And you can do that for each one of these empty columns. And there are 4 of them. So now I have a really nice, easy to look at and use table. I can use this table to sort and filter it. So for example, if I want to sort it by birth date, I can find the birth date column, click up at the very top to select the whole column, and then come over to this button over here, sort and filter, and then I can sort new to oldest. This is going to come up, and you do want to expand the selection because that's going to include all of your data in the sort. So go ahead and click sort. And now you can see that it has been sorted, and so that my youngest child is at the very top of the list and my oldest child is at the very bottom of the list. If this works for your program in order to administer the ASQSE 2, so if you're able to just use the birth date in this ordered list to figure out what aged questionnaire each child needs, you can stop right here. If you want to continue, there is a formula you can write to figure out the actual age in months of each child. To do this process, you need to add 2 columns to the end of this table. The first column is going to be screening date. So I'm going to go ahead and type that up here. And the second column is going to be age. In the screening date column, we just want to put the date that you plan to do the screening. So I said that I was going to do my screener in the spring of 2021. So I'm going to put in a date in the spring of 2021. So I'm going to say that I'm going to do my screener on April 1st of 2021. What I want is I want this date to show up in each one of these cells in this table. So each one of these cells in this column in this table. The way we're going to do that is by selecting the first cell, click, hold, and drag it down to the bottom of the table. And then come up for here. There's a little button that says fill. I'm going to click on fill, and I want to fill down. And that's simply just going to put the same date in every single one of those cells in this column. So you can see the same date is in every single one. Now I can write a formula to figure out my age. We're going to use the date diff formula to calculate age. First you're going to type in equals, and then date diff. Date, and then DIF. Parentheses. And the way the date diff function works is it finds the difference between your first date that you put in and the last date you put in. So the first thing I need to put in is the first date. So the date that came first in the timeline, which will be the birth date. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to find the cell in this row that has the child's birth date in it. So that's C2 in my table. I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to put a comma, and now I need to put the screening date or the last date in the timeline. And again, I'm going to click on the cell or put in the cell name for the row, and that's J2 in my table. Finally, I just need to tell the formula what format I want that age to come back in. And for the purposes of the ASQSE 2, I want it in months. And the way to note that is by putting a quotation mark, a lowercase m, and another quotation mark. And that's the formula. I put in one more parentheses to finish it and click enter. And so my formula calculated that this child is 9 months as of the screening date of 4/1/2021. Now I want this formula to expand down this column, and the way to do that is to click on the first cell, the cell you just wrote that formula in, select it, and then there's a little square in the bottom here. You're going to click on that, hold, and drag to the bottom of your table. And that will expand the formula to all of these other ones, to all of these cells. So now I have the age in months of each one of the children in my table. Once I have this information, I can use an ASQSE 2 guide. So that would be something like this. This is an ASQSE 3 or an ASQSE 2 age administration chart. So now that I have each child's age in months, I would find where it falls over here, and then I can figure out which ASQSE 2 I need to give that child. For example, if you remember, the first child in our list had an age of 9 months. I can use the column titled Child's Age and find where 9 months would fall. So there's a category that's 9 months 0 days through 9 months 30 days, and that's where the 9-month category would fall. Follow this across to the ASQSE 2 column, and I see that this child should receive a 12-month ASQSE 2. Keep in mind that for children who are under the age of 2 and who were born 3 or more weeks premature, you will need to adjust their age for prematurity in order to administer the correct ASQSE 2. The formula that we wrote in our spreadsheet in our CSV file is not complex enough to really correctly calculate this. If you wanted to, you could put the due date in the birth date column in order to calculate the adjusted age. Again, that would only apply to children who are under the age of 2 and who were born 3 or more weeks premature. The other, and I would say better option, is to use an online age calculator like the one that the ASQ provides. And that is how you pull the child demographic report and use it to find the ages of your children in order to administer the ASQSE 2.